Something really, really great happened to me today. I've been excited about it all day long. And it turns out to be the really great thing that happened to me today turns out to be the exact same thing that happened for all of you today. Does anyone have an idea of what great thing happened to me and what great thing happened for all of you? Because it's the exact same thing. Any idea what that could have been? That's it. This is the answer right here. We all woke up this morning. And when you got up this morning, you should have been really excited. Maybe you might have an ache or pain or worry or woe, or you said to yourself, I can't believe the weather's going to change. But the truth of the matter is this. We all woke up this morning. And when you understand just what that means, that is so precious. You see, we all went to sleep last night, and through the course of the night, our heart continued to beat. We always continue to breathe. And then we are lucky enough to open up our eyes this morning. St. Francis of Assisi says something very interesting. This is a great quote from St. Francis of Assisi. We should actually put this down in our minds. Let's take a look. He says this: the most joyful second of each day is the second I wake up. And that is true. Because every so often it might happen in our life, because I know people this has happened too, where they went to sleep and they did not wake up in the morning. Well, it turns out to be that waking up in the morning, be given another day of life, that's not based upon merit. It's not something I deserve. It's not something that God is forced to give me. It's based upon God's mercy, His generosity. Having another day of life is predicated upon His kindness that He's going to extend to me. That's why we should be so excited when we wake up in the morning, because we got potentially another day of life. Now, we're not going to know for certain if it's another day of life until we crawl back in bed that night. But when we do, we'll be able to conclude I was given an entire whole day. Now, that should always put a smile on your face. You see, that's the key point of not today's gospel reading, but that's the key point of the feast day which we celebrate this weekend. Today is known as the 34th Sunday in Ordinary Time of the church year, known as the liturgical year. This Sunday, also called Christ the King Sunday, more appropriately, is the last Sunday of the church year. So everything ends. The calendar year ends. The church year ends. My life will end. Your life will end. You know, it reminds me of this priest. He was teaching fourth graders in a Catholic school. And he was talking to the fourth graders about what's the most important item on a tombstone. And one little boy raised his hand. He said, Father, the one thing you always see in a tombstone is a person's first name. That's always there. I always see that. Someone else raised their hand and said, Father, the one thing you always see in a tombstone is a person's last name. With the first name and the last name, it really gives you a really good idea who's located at that grave spot. Okay. Someone else raised their hand and said, Father, the one thing you always see on a tombstone is a person's birthday. That's always there. Someone else raised their hand and said, the one thing you always see in a tombstone is a person's death date. And then with their birth date and a death date, you can compute their age. How much life did God give to that person here in the face of this earth? Well, the priest was fairly happy. He thought they covered all the items located on a tombstone, so they were going to move on to another subject for class that day. As they're moving on to another subject, this little girl in the back of the room, she's raising her hand, making all kind of commotion. She definitely wants to be recognized by the priest. So he said, well, what do you want to say? And she said, Father, you left off the most important item located on a tombstone. And he said, what's that? And she said, Father, it's that little dash, it's that little hyphen between the birth date and the death date. Oh, he said, that's not really that important. That just separates all those dates from clashing together. Oh, no, she said, Father, that little hyphen, that little dash, that represents a person's life. That's true. Your birth date and your death date are just 2 days out of your entire life. But your life is predicated on that hyphen. And when you take your last breath, and your death date is placed on your tombstone, it's known by all, and then your hyphen is completed. When God looks at your hyphen, will He be pleased with what He sees? Because that's your life. Maybe that's not really that important. Maybe the more important question to ask is this. When God looks at your hyphen, when it is actually put there at the moment you acquire your death date, will you be pleased with what God sees? Are you going to be able to say, God, you gave me so much life in the earth, and I lived it well. And I woke up every morning excited. And I was truly appreciative for each second and each hour of life that you gave to me. I think I did it well. Oh, I made mistakes, and I had some bumps and some hurdles and some trials and difficulties. But as I assess my life and my life, God, I'm pretty proud of what you're going to examine and what you're going to see. All of us in church tonight, we all have and we have all acquired a birthday. That's why we're here. We're alive. We're all working on our hyphen, which is our life. And our hyphen is different for each one of us. Some people receive a very short hyphen, a very short life. They're called home back to God moments after they're conceived sometimes. They're called home back to God sometimes months and years after they're born. Sometimes they're called back to home even as young teenagers on their way to the prom, which always brings a tear to your eye. Some people, their dash is much longer. Their life is longer. Some people have a really, really long life. And so their dash is a little wider. All we know is this. Everything ends, unfortunately. It is sad to know that from my little perspective that my life one day will end, because I enjoy being here. It is sad for you, from your perspective, that unfortunately one day your life is going to end. And when that happens, the world will continue. That's probably even sadder to know that the world will continue as it does with me, and it will continue without me. We all have a birthday. We'll acquire the death day. Right now we're working on our hyphen. And what I want you to write down in your head, and what I want you to remember tomorrow morning, hopefully, if you're lucky enough through the grace of the good Lord to open up your peepers tomorrow morning, hopefully you'll wake up even if you have an ache or pain or problem or woe. You'll simply say, God, thank you. Thank you for another day of life. Because I think this quote by St. Francis is one that we should live and remember and say every morning when we wake up. Because everything eventually ends. The calendar year, the church year, and our life. St. Francis is right. Say this tomorrow morning when you wake up, if you're lucky enough to do so. The most joyful second of each day is the second I wake up.